Here, this is the program VCarve Pro. We have a download for it. We can get that to you. If we want to create a new file for the CNC router, you click on Create New File, and then you get this display. It's kind of a little bit difficult to navigate through sometimes. Here on the left is the job setup. It's got the height, the width of the board that you're going to cut on. It's got the thickness of the board and the location of the zero on the board. And the conversation on where the zero is kind of important to understand as you approach getting it in the image G code and then processing. You'll notice the zero is also here on the bottom left, this little red dot that represents where the zero is going to be in relationship to the CNC router. On the CNC router, the zero is actually on the back side, so it's on the back left. If you can see, if you're looking at the CNC router from the back, it would be the back left. So here, if you're here, if you want to import like a file, so instead of your file with the thickness and the size, just hit OK. So now here you have the actual drawing board to go and import an actual file. If you want to import a vector file, you can go here, or a bitmap image, which will be like a JPEG. I'm going to do the bitmap image to see how it comes in. So right now it will go to the file tree, and you got to kind of track it down. Let's see if I can take, let's do the Geneva High School logo itself. Now this one's obviously very, very complex, so it's not going to run it fantastic, right? I'm just going to resize it. And then what we're going to do is go to trace it. So you click on the image, and then you can hit, since it's a bitmap image in there, we can hit trace this bitmap. And we know it's a color image, so I'm going to click color. I would just mess with those to see what happens. Kind of the key component. This is some of the weirdness of this program to get it to work. There's like, sometimes you have to hit preview for it to hit preview, then it creates a vector just based off of that. Okay, I'm going to hit apply, and so we're really not going to have the whole picture on it, right? But we have this vector that got overlaid that's grouped. Now if we ungroup objects, ungroup onto groups layer, so we have that background image and we delete it, and that's what's left. Obviously there's additional messing with it if you're getting a picture itself and wanting to cut through the picture. It's easier if you draw it in here because they're all built for the system. Now on this, you notice we have lines of text, and then we have this kind of folded circle. So we have to have kind of a conversation of how you want to approach that. If we were just doing the text, we would highlight all the individual text options. And in general, when you do create it for text and you want to cut for text, when you go to the toolbars menu in the top right, you want to use the VCarve setting. The VCarve setting uses a triangular, a bit with a cross section that's a triangle. The bit actually cuts like it's a cone, right? And it goes in and out, and it gets an important, it automatically changes the depth of the cut so that it can go back to the corners and get sharp corners on the image itself. So, but when you look at the actual product that's created, it has that V-carve. It has that arc, those diagonal cuts kind of in the bevel areas. If that makes sense. So like if I wanted to just take this home and make it a bevel cut for that, I would hit V-carve, graving tool path, and I go through the options. We want to start the depth at 0. You have options, and we can cut it to a flat depth, but that's a little bit tricky sometimes. You kind of have to get familiar with what you're trying to carve and on what medium you're trying to carve and how deep you're trying to carve it in those types of things. Lots of different varieties there. It'll automatically cut it if you don't hit flat depth. Okay, here is where you check which bit you're going to use. There are stock bits that are located in this section, and you choose it based off of the bits that we have. And it understands that, and it cuts it. The one that we have on the VCarve is a 90 degree 0.5 bit that you can use. So, and that's what's probably in there right now. Select the letters in here to choose. Since we're cutting in letters, this is not going to cut them all the way through. This is going to cut kind of a relief, a bevel cut in the product for just this word home. If we wanted to select all the letters, we would select them all, and then we can actually right click on it and we can group those objects so they work together as a single piece. Okay, so if we go to tool paths, then we're going to cut it, automatically change the depth. There's some other settings here that you can mess with. We're not really gonna mess with that at all right now. If we hit calculate, you can see that it changes view to the 3D view. This is kind of what it would look like, what those paths look like. This is where the router is actually going to cut and the order at which it cuts it. If you notice the red line and the different things. You can go and you can preview that over here at the right by hitting play, and it'll cut. So that's what it's actually going to look like in the piece of wood that we have. Okay, so notice how it's not through because it just doesn't need to cut that down. If you end up cutting too deep, it'll warn you that you're going to cut too deep. The software will. Okay, if we cut through the wood and we want to do that on purpose, it'll tell you you're going to cut through. So it'll say put a piece of the, material that you don't care about underneath as you do it, which is actually what we have over there right now. So I'm going to go back to toolpaths right now. It's weird after it's previewed sometimes trying to get it. Again, you hit preview and it doesn't cut. You want to go back to that blue screen. You have to hit reset preview, and you could preview all toolpaths, just selected ones. Hit play and it cuts it again, so you can actually see how it's going to go about cutting. Okay, so right now there's that. We have one toolpath VCarve 1. That's going to be that home set. Suppose then we also want to cut the same piece. We want to keep it in the same location. We want to cut all the way through. So we're going to go back to new. When we go back to new, this is the path we want to cut. So right now we've just created a path for the home. Now we're going to create a path for this, so we cut out that ring. We're going to go to tool paths. This is kind of awkward, right? Where is it? How do I do it? How do I make the choose? Because we're actually in this preview toolpath mode. We have to click close. This is one of those annoying things that are easy to forget, and like you get stuck here for like 10 minutes and you're super frustrated and you're like, I don't want to do this. So we'll go back there and it goes back. Now we've selected that one and we want to cut through. So we're going to go back to toolpaths again. There's different options. So there's pocket toolpath. That's like you want to cut like a square pocket in it. So like a tray. If it's a thick 2-inch piece of wood, you want to cut the center out of that 2-inch piece of wood and keep the whole thing solid, which is actually kind of a cute idea. Maybe we should do that for fun for us to see it run. And to like put change in or what have you. Totally an easy task to do that would be free and a great beginning level. And you could put a word on the bottom of it. If it's 2-inch, you just don't cut too far right, on the first cut. It would take a long time to carve it out. Yeah. Anyways, so that would be that one. If we want to cut a profile toolpath, which is it? Profile toolpath, I believe, will trace the lines. Yes, trace the lines and just trace the lines. So it's not going to cut out anything in between of it. It's just going to cut on those vector lines. You have to choose whether, with each line, whether you want to be outside the line or inside the line. And that depends on the general gist of what that line itself looks like, with what actually is outside and what actually is inside. So you kind of have to interpret that as well. And sometimes it takes a little bit of testing to get used to it. Scrap piece of wood and maybe work on it. But this is pretty clear. If I do, I probably want to go outside on the outside circle and inside on the inside circle. So I'm actually going to deselect the toolpath vectors, just select that because I want to go outside that because I don't want to get closer to where the words would be. So I'm going to go outside. And then we talk about the type of bit. This would represent we're going to have to change bits mid through. So when we build the decode, we're going to have to say build just these toolpaths in one package, and then build these other toolpaths in the second package. Okay. So this one, I'm going to go with this bit, the end mill bit. We happen to have it. It was the one that was sitting on the counter, which was my fault. But we want to change the cut depth. If we know this piece is 3/4 of an inch, and we want it to go through and through, we want to go a little bit further than 3/4 of an inch to make sure we get through. On it though, if you're going to cut through, so the piece doesn't move on the board as it's cutting, if it needs to do additional cuts, or when it gets closer to the end, it might break the piece out and the piece might go flying. So you have to make sure to create tabs, and it can automatically create tabs. These will be little tabs sections that you'll cut out at the end of the project, so that the thing you want cut out is still stable as it's still cutting all the other parts. Without those tabs, it's dangerous. So we hit, you can edit the tabs, you can edit the thickness, you can edit the length, depending on the type of material you have. Last thing I was doing, which is why the settings are such, is because I did it in MDF, and MDF can be kind of brittle when it gets light, right? And so I wanted it to be almost 1/4 of an inch. It's easy to cut, but it'll get tossed all over the place. If it was oak, we're probably okay. Or maple, we're probably okay. Anything with really tight grain lines on wood, you're probably okay. But glued up pieces, definitely you want to go a little thicker than typical. For softwoods, you probably want to go a little thicker than normal. Obviously, who knows? Thicker, the safer, right?
But that's figuring out the material aspect.
Yeah. You got recorded on that. So then you go here and you create. It's going to warn you, like I mentioned, that it's going to cut through. Will cut through. Don't mess with that. There it is. Okay. And it's no tabs on vector. Curious. We didn't get tabs, so we had an error there, and let's troubleshoot that error. Thankfully, it won't. Now you'll notice it's got this preview. If I cut it, it's going to show that it's cut all the way through, but it's going to also show that it's no tabs in it. So we want to be safe. So what we want to do is I'm just going to click on this, right click, and we're going to delete this. We're going to start. Not edit. I guess we can edit. Okay, so what we're going to do is after you specify the size of your tabs, you actually have to hit edit tabs for the tabs to show up, and then you have to hit add tabs, and you can specify how many tabs you actually want to show. I'm just going to have 3. I think that's simple. It'll show on the screen where those tabs are located to the preview. So I'm going to hit close here, and and then after that we're going to go down. We're going to calculate it again. Blah blah blah. I'm going to cut through. We no longer get the warning that's saying that there's no. On the preview, look, the tabs haven't showed up. That's because we have to turn around and we have to restart the preview and redo the preview, and the tabs will show up. And you want to make sure the tabs show up here. If they don't show up here, it's an issue. So I'm going to hit close. Let's just say we want this as a ring. Okay, we can do that on the inside one. We can click here. We can go now cut on the inside of the toolpath. We go here. No, it was this, and then we click inside there. It actually cuts the opposite direction too, because the way that the router moves, which is kind of neat. Let's say this is all we wanted to do with it. We're ready to build the G code. Okay, so right now what we're actually going to have is we're going to have this word home, and we're going to have this circle cut out, so it's going to be like a hockey puck. Okay, we want to build this in 2 different aspects because we have 2 different bits. So I'm just going to click on this, and then this is one of the difficult parts. I want to save the toolpath. Hit save the toolpath. It's got to be CNC arc USB arc, CNC Shark USB arcs inch.tab. Okay, that's the setting there. It's going to just do this. You can verify what type of bit it is. You can verify the toolpath name. We're only clicking on that, so we're going to hit save, and then it saves a file called. That's the file that we're going to bring into the other computer. Okay, then we want to do the next one, so we click here. Notice how some things changes. We want to save a second toolpath. We want the post processor that references what this box is with the big red button. Hit save toolpath profile. That's the name of it. So now we're going to load those in a second, and we're going to do those 2 things separately. Okay.